As we open the meeting today, let's share a moment of silence to remember our honorary member, Marie Broussard. Thank you, everyone. Marie was definitely a jewel of a person. I'm so glad I had the opportunity to know her. Welcome to the Rotary Club of Beaumont, where together we see a world where people unite and take action to create lasting change across the globe, in our communities, and in ourselves. Today, our invocation is going to be brought to us by Debbie Maxwell, registered nurse, Christus St. Elizabeth, and the pledges by Lynn Hill, co-owner, Nuvation Tech. Debbie.
Dear God, we bow our heads in prayer to you, thanking you for this day. And even though it might be dreary and weathered, we have the promise that the sun will shine tomorrow. May you please bless the Rotary Club meeting today, the leaders, the members, our speaker especially, and the family of Marie Broussard. Please give us the encouragement to put forth our best for our club, our community, our country, and our world. We give you all the praise, and in Jesus' name we pray, amen.
Good afternoon, Rotarians. If you would join me for the pledge to the United States flag and to the Texas flag. The United States flag. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United
States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The Texas pledge.
Honor the Texas
flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one indivisible. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie and Lynn. Now for board action, Jay Wilson, Secretary, will be reporting.
Thank you, Madam President. Good afternoon, everyone. Your board met yesterday and had a very productive meeting. From the membership side, the board ratified our electronic vote to officially welcome past District Governor Gig Langston to our club. And unfortunately, the board had to approve the termination of Kevin Dodson. We approved 3 classification changes that were proposed by the classification committee. So get ready, these are long. They are Craig Escamilla from Director of Student Retention and Success at Lamar University, classification, University, Student Retention and Success, to owner of CAE Solutions LLC, classification, Business Services Consulting. Cindy Bloodsworth Janice from Event Planning Consultant at Bloodworth Enterprises, classification, Business Service Event Planning, to Operations Manager of Steep Meadows Solutions, classification, Computer Operations Manager. And last, D. Lane from Event Banquet Sales, Coshada Casino Resort, classification, Casinos Banquet Sales, to Sales for R&P Employer Solutions, classification, Sales Business Staffing. The board also approved a service project to help an elementary school in Sulphur, Louisiana, because of the impact of Hurricane Laura. They're in bad need of school supplies for teachers and children to replace what was destroyed by the storm. Watch for information in your Rotarygram, and John Lee will share some more information at the next meeting. And finally, the board again discussed when it might be safe to return to in-person meetings. And we ultimately made the decision that it'd be in everyone's best interest to continue meeting using Zoom through the end of 2020. As we continue to assess the situation and make the right decision, we would like everyone's input. Jackie is going to put a really short survey up that we'd ask everyone to take right now. It's electronic, it's anonymous, and all you have to do is respond to 2 very simple questions. So as Jackie puts that up, we'll give everyone about a minute to answer. And if I remember, even the results aren't going to be shown, so it is completely anonymous. We plan to do this survey each week, to get a different mix of everybody that's involved, and we'll do it each week at the beginning of the meeting, and that will kind of help define our plans going forward. And once that's done and everybody has answered those 2 questions, that will conclude the board action from yesterday.
Thank you, Jay. Now, Gary Moncla,
Yes.
you have an announcement.
Yes, I do. Our last project for the year is to be coming up next month. It's going to be on Wednesday, November the 11th, Veterans Day. If you're interested in participating, please either get with Pat or myself. Go ahead and get signed up. As we have been doing, we're going to still be loading out flags that'll be the Tuesday before that evening, which a lot of people seem to be doing. I think we're doing about 50-50. So that way you can go and pick them up the night before, and you don't have to get up as early the next morning. And you can just make sure you make the arrangement for your crews to meet up where you're going to be, meet up and just for your route. So please sign up. We'd love to have you.
Thank you, Gary. And it is one of our few opportunities to meet up with our fellow Rotarians and catch up a little bit. Now to introduce our guest speaker, we have Lynn Castle, Executive Director of the Art Museum of Southeast Texas.
First of all, before I introduce our guest speaker, I think we should have a contest on who has the best backdrop for Zoom. Yeah, I think Craig and our guest speaker, Ron, have 2 of the best I've seen today so far. So anyway, Ron Saikowski is a native Texan born and raised in Wichita Falls. He graduated from Texas Tech in 1973 with a civil engineering degree. While in college, he secretly made wine in his dorm closet. So I think he was probably pretty popular in his dorm. Ron's first memories of wine were when he was just 5 years old, of his mom mixing Morgan David Manischewitz wine with soda water for sparkling wine. Ron attended an 8-week series of serious wine tastings taught by Richard's Liquors in 1978. This heightened his interest in wine and provided a greater appreciation for wines. Ron's wine interest peaked after selling his consulting engineering firm in 2003. Ron has made numerous week-long trips to California, visiting various wine regions for the purpose of enhancing his wine knowledge. He has interned at Alexander Valley Vineyards as a cellar rat and at Bernhard Winery as an assistant winemaker. Ron has been a wine columnist for 15 years, initially writing weekly wine columns in The Courier, which eventually resulted in a syndicated wine column in Hearst Publications. As a result of his wine writing, he received the 2010 Texas Wine Medal Award from the Texas Wine and Grape Growers Association. I think he needs to come to our Wine Down with Rotary next time. I'm going to send him a ticket. Ron has conducted numerous wine tastings for a variety of groups, from the British travel agents to the beer drinkers. He has been involved in major wine events such as Wine and Food Week in the Woodlands, a wine captain for 10 years, Rotary wine dinners, Around the World in 180 Minutes, and the Montgomery County Fair Association Wine Gala. Ron still continues as a consulting engineer by day, owning Quest Engineering, and as a Wineaux at night. Ron is passionate for engineering, wines, church, Rotary, and several nonprofit boards. Enjoy Ron's passions for wine from the engineer's perspective in his wine column. Ron? Maybe he went to go get a glass of wine. There he is.
You're
There you are.
muted. Well, I'm unmuted. Okay, I'm going to ask everybody a question. You raise your hands if you have been to 5 or more Texas wineries. Okay, we have a few out there. I see. Okay, so our presentation today is going to be about the Texas wine industry. And y'all are familiar with a phenomenon we had back in the 20s and ended in 1933. It was called Prohibition. It was a bad economic decision as far as prohibiting people from wanting certain things because it just bred corruption. And I think we can learn some lessons from that. Not that I promote alcohol, but you know, back in the 80s, 70s, I remember growing up in the hippie generation, and there was a prohibition that came up in California against LSD, and marijuana was banned and all that, and look what's happened. So alcohol prohibition should never happen. That's just my personal opinion. But what happened in Texas is that every one of the 200 or so wineries that Texas had back in the early 1900s shut down except for one over in Laredo, Texas. And now we're on a 4th generation at that winery called Laga Vista Winery. It wasn't until 1975 that Texas actually got its first winery in operation, and that was up in the Texas High Plains. You probably have heard of Wineaux Estacado. Wineaux was founded in 1975 as a corporation because nobody wanted to take any responsibility. It was up in the High Plains of Texas, which was also known as the Bible Belt. I don't know how many of y'all remember back that far. Times have changed, obviously, in that time period. But Dr. McPherson, or Doc as he was called, set up this corporation called Wineaux Estacado. What about going through getting a permit from the federal government and also from the Texas Alcoholic Beverage Commission? He found out there were 3 generations of TABC people that had never permitted a winery. So he was a college professor at Tech, and he literally taught them how to permit wineries. Before he passed on, he showed me the original winery he had, and says, "Ron, you see these walls? These are 12-inch thick cinder block walls. Do you know why?" "Yeah, I'm a structural engineer, and I understand." And he says, "No, you don't understand. I was afraid they were going to shoot my tanks out because that was in the hub of the Bible Belt." And so by the time we reached from 75 to 1980, we had 3 wineries in Texas. And those 3 wineries were Wineaux Estacado, Fall Creek, up in the Texas High Plains, and Messina Hoff over here by Bryan College Station. And so those 3 wineries have evolved into, by the year 2005, which is when I really started writing heavy about wines here in Texas, we had 50 wineries. Can you imagine 50 wineries? Now, 2020, anybody want to guess how many wineries we have in Texas?
247.
Okay, increase that number by at least 2. Just slightly over 600 wineries here in Texas. And y'all have one over near Beaumont called Wineaux and George, and they make their wines off of fruit, not necessarily grapes. Basically, wines are made from grapes, the type that we normally associate with. But you can also make them out of strawberry. Anybody remember Boone's Farm Strawberry Hill wine? Yeah, back in our college days. It was great wine, by the way, to clean the floors and windows. It was great cleaning device. Uh, Texas wineries have learned to adapt to our climate, and what wineries have done over the years is they looked at what's happening over in Europe, and they bring the latitude across the big pond, and we find that the grape varietals from Spain, Italy, and southern France do especially well here in Texas. And along the Gulf Coast, we have hybrid grapes because we have to have hybrids because we have high humidity, high nighttime temperatures. In the summertime, our temperatures rarely go below 70 degrees, and grapes should have a temperature of around 60 to 55 degrees to grow well and develop their character. And the reason is because the lower nighttime temperatures help slow down the metabolism of the grapes. Otherwise, they'd go absolutely crazy and produce these leafy grapes without much character. So we want to slow down that grape growth. And so what we have, and then the other reasons that we don't have the Vitis vinifera, the classic grapes growing along the Gulf Coast, is we have this proliferation of a little bug. You have probably never heard it, called a glassy winged sharpshooter. And it's just like our mosquito. It loves the grapevines. It'll bite into the xylem of the blood vessel and pull out the sap, and it ejects the bacteria. Well, that bacteria causes this plaque to build up in the xylem, and it cuts the roots off from the grapes, and that's called Pierce's disease. We are very close to getting that overcome with PD-resistant grapevines that have been cloned over in California and Texas A&M. Do we have any Aggies amongst us? They were the first ones to actually come up with a cure for Pierce's disease using a virus cocktail. But anyway, getting back to Texas grapes, we grow a huge variety of grapes. And Lynn, I'd sent you my my PowerPoint. I don't know if you want to bring that up or you just want me to talk off the top of my head. In Texas, we have 23 different grape varietals that for white wines that we grow. And there's like 16 red grape varietals that we grow. Texas has become very well known throughout the world for its Viognier, spelled Viognier, or in West Texas they call it Vinogenier. The Viognier wines that come out of Texas, there were 7 from Texas, 7 from California, and 7 from France, southwest France, where the grape varietal originated. Brown bags were placed over the bottles, and an international wine panel drank those wines and judged them about 4 years ago. The top 7 wines all came from Texas. It's not saying we make the best wines in the world, but we make some pretty good stuff. Our Tempranillos are well known. Tempranillos originate from northern Spain in the Riojas. Sangiovese from Italy over on the west coast in the Uruguay. And Texas actually, in my opinion, makes a much better Tannat than, I'm not sure if I'm still in on my Zoom meeting here because my computer just shut down. Okay, let me see if I got it here. Yep, I see y'all. Okay. It's weird. I've been having some power problems here off and on, and things just shut down over here. So Bending Branch out of Comfort, Texas, which is about a half an hour west of San Antonio, has some of the best Tannat that I've ever had. And Texas, historically, our wineries
Oh, it says you're screen sharing.
are just starting. I'm online. I just found out I am online. So our Texas wineries are doing fairly well, because as we got more and more wineries, it's not the same 4 or 5 or 6, but we have as many as 40 or 50 wineries that are are competing now nationally and internationally. As a, for instance, San Francisco International Wine Competition, beginning of this year, Texas walked off with 18 double gold medals, about the same as California. All told, we had about 300 medals that were earned by Texas wineries using Texas fruit. So I found that to be very interesting. Okay, you could see there's a map. I don't know if y'all could see that or if you're seeing me, but Lynn, what do we have there? You don't have to worry about that. I'll just keep talking.
I think they can see it. Pretty sure. Can you see it, Cindy?
Okay, I see from
Yeah, they can
Rebecca
see it.
Maxwell. I can see it. Okay, so
Okay.
we have that map. How do we?
Just tell me when you want me to. Just tell me when you want me to advance.
Okay, so in Texas now we have those several wine, grape growing areas, and the Texas Hill Country is the second largest approved appellation by the U.S. Department of Agriculture in the country. Pretty big area. Texas High Plains is also big. What makes Texas High Plains so wonderful, and about 2/3 of our grapes actually grown on the Texas High Plains, is because they're at a high elevation. Yes, they get 100 degrees in the summertime, but at nighttime it cools off to the 50s. So it's a perfect grape growing area. Plus, at 3,000 plus feet above sea level, the grapes over there don't have the allergens that show up on their skins like the grapes that are grown in California and other areas. So if you have allergy problems when you drink wine and you turn flush, it's probably because you have allergies, and the allergens that show up from the grapes that have been converted into wines show up in those wines. So if you obtain if you obtain wines made from grapes grown above 3,000 feet, you have less of a possibility of getting allergens on the skins and hence into the wines that you drink. So if anybody has those types of grape reactions, it may be because of the sourcing of where your grapes are coming from. Go ahead and advance to the next slide if you can. Okay. So as I said earlier, we have two wine regions, those along the Texas Gulf Coast, and we grow in great abundance Blanc du Bois grapes. Has anybody had a Blanc du Bois wine? We are winning double golds in New York City and San Francisco with our white dry Blanc du Bois, and then we could also make it into a wonderful Madeira, which is a higher alcohol wine. It's aged, it has a nutty taste to it. Raymond Hack down in Galveston County, I consider to be the father of Blanc du Bois because he brought that wine grape over to Texas. And we're now the largest producer of Blanc du Bois in the world. How about that? The rest of the Texas area, we grow the Vitis vinifera. And go ahead and proceed to the next slide if you can. Okay, I can barely see that, but yeah. Okay, so keep going, next slide. And we're going to run real fast through these slides. This slide presentation will be made available to anybody that would like it, but there's a variety of white grapes and red grapes that we have. Keep going to the next slide. And next slide. And next slide. And we'll go through all these grape varietals. Not in my presentation because I know we don't have a whole lot of time. But we do have the abundance. I'm just trying to make you aware of all the abundance of different grapes that we have here in our Texas region. Our next slide, keep going and keep going and keep going, and there's your reds. Keep going through those. Yeah, keep going, and you'll get to the slide that says rosé versus blush. And does anybody know what a rosé wine is? Basically, you take
Yeah,
a
I do.
red grape varietal and you try to make it into a white wine. And uh, the red grapes have this color to them. And that blush color, like you see a white Zinfandel, it's not truly a white, but they try to make it into a white wine. It's got that blush, shrimpy color to it. That is a result of the skins that are in the wine. Now, when you make a white wine, as you destem and crush your grapes, you want to take the skins, press the juice out and the pulp out as soon as you can, because the skins in white wines will also impart some color, brownish tint, which is not very acceptable. But the red color making the rosé is a beautiful color. And then the blush wine, you actually take two finished wines, a red and a white, and you blend them together, usually about 1 part of red to about 5 parts of white, to give it that shrimpy blush pinkish color. So now you know the difference between a rosé and a blush. Let me also say this, is that when you make a red wine, you do keep the skins, the seeds, the pulp, everything fermenting in the tank all together. And the skins will float up to the top during the fermentation because of the CO2 gas that the yeast emit. And the yeast eat on the sugars that are in the grapes producing the alcohol, which is one of the characteristics, obviously, of wines. The because the skins float up to the top, and you do want the skins to release their esters and aromatics into the red floating wine, into the red wine while it's fermenting, you have to get those skins back in. So it's manual punch down twice a day, sometimes 3 times a day, which is a very heavy experience. And most winemakers don't do that anymore unless it's very small batches. But they usually take a pump at the bottom, pump the juice out, and discharge that fermenting juice on top of the floating skins to break up those skins. And after fermenting like that for 8 to 10 days at 62 to 65 degrees, then your tank is, the juice is pulled out from the bottom, and the leftover skins in the bottom of the tank are then manually raked out, and they're put through the press that the white wine is pressed for their, to remove the grape skins. Well, in this case, they remove the grape skins and what remaining seeds there are, and you get some wonderful red wines. Of course, you have to, the wines, once they're fermented, have a lot of floating solids, so we do what we call clarification. In clarification, we basically add a chemical like clay particles, which are colloidal in nature, or egg whites, and it flows through from the top all the way down to the bottom and helps to bring out the solids. So you pull the solids off the bottom, you pump off the top, the clarified liquid, and you continue doing that 2, 3, 4 times until your wine is almost clear as far as particles that are in the wine. The wine, in most cases, is disinfected to remove the remaining yeast and bacteria so you don't get a secondary fermentation. In the bottle, we add a little bit of potassium metabisulfite. So if you think that sulfites in the wine cause you to react, I will put it to you this way, that tomato juice has about 10 times the amount of sulfites than wine does. Same with Welch's grape juice. So if you drink Welch's grape juice and tomato juice, you don't react to it, then the reason you're reacting to the wine is probably allergies. With regards to finishing off the wine at the very end, we usually filter through a filter press, where we will filter a wine anywhere from 0.5 microns to remove the solids in the yeast to about 10 microns, depending on how natural you want the wine to be in the taste. Once the wine is filtered, then we bottle it, then we'll age it in the bottle. When it comes down to Texas, we have not received a lot of recognition until the last 2 or 3 years with the wines that we make. And we do some wonderful wines. You can go on to the next slide. I have a tendency to talk. So, oh yeah, growing grapes. Let me tell you about growing grapes. If you notice, we have these little trellis systems. You can see in the background, that's one type of trellis system where you can see in the background of the picture behind me that there's these trunks that come up, and then they have the shoots that come off either side, and they're hung over a wire trellis. And we grow those. We usually set those up on a north-south basis because you want a uniformity as the sun rises in the dawn, goes over the grapevine, and sets in at dusk, that grapevine gets the same amount of uniformity. If you put your grapevines west to east, you're not going to get that uniformity because the vines on the far west side will get more sunlight than the ones on the east side. So you don't get a uniformity in your grape crop. The only place I've ever seen where they orient the wine trellises west to east is in North Texas, and a couple of vineyards out there, because they have these blowing winds that blow from west to east, and the vineyard owners say they orient it that way so that the Texas tumbleweeds have a way to get out of the vineyards. Otherwise, they'll be racked up on the far west side of the vineyards. Go to the next slide, please. Okay, got to look at that picture. Oh, grape picking time. So, how do we know when grapes are ready to be picked? I use 3 situations here. Number 1, grapes, as they go through a maturing, they'll go through a phenomenon called veraison. Veration's where the little berries on the vines will start getting bigger and plumper, and the skin starts getting very thin. And so it's maturing. So the grape is getting the amount of esters and aromatics from the roots and getting imparted soil characteristics. And so you have to look at what I call is a grape matured to its varietal characteristics. And with a Cabernet Sauvignon, you're looking for all that blackberry and stone fruit that's in there. So is it ripe? The second thing that I look at is the actual ripeness of the grape, because all those grapes have seeds in them. And when the grapes are maturing, those seeds are still green. And when the grapes finally reach maturity, they are actually brown, dark brown, and they taste just like a nut. So I enjoy eating the grapes off the vines when I'm picking them because they have such a good sweet flavor and a nutty flavor. And then the third thing I'm looking for is the chemistry. We are looking at high sugar contents in the grapes, and those grapes, for instance, the Cabernet Sauvignon will have sugar contents between 26 and 30% sugars. Compare that to the Thompson seedless grapes you get in the grocery store at 9 to 10%. So you can see there's a huge difference in the sugars. You want a pH that's down for your whites about 3.2 to 3.4, for your reds about 3.5 to 3.8, and you want your total acidity to be as high as possible. So you got these 3 curves that you're plotting as these grapes are going. One is how much sugar level you have, the other is what your acid level is, and the third level is basically the pH. So you want your pH to be low, your total acidity to be high, and your sugars to be as high as possible. I let the acids run my grape picking schedule. That's the ideal situation. So if you had the labor force to pick the grapes, that would be wonderful if you had them right at your moment's disposal. But if you're in California, you've got a few hundred other grape vineyards that want to pick grapes about the same time, so there's a lack of labor. On the Texas High Plains, where everything is so flat, we've actually are bringing in these grape harvesting machines. They'll span the row and they'll actually obtain the grapes in a much purer, cleaner situation than hand-picked grapes, surprisingly, but that's what I found when I was picking grapes and being a cellar rat in California. The grapes that are coming in off the machine pickers, they're coming in with very little what they call mog, or material other than grapes. There's no leaves, there's no rocks. And why rocks? Because hand pickers get paid by the pound, so they have a tendency to put a few rocks in there too. But they don't remove the leaves when they pull off or cut the bunches of grapes off. And the big difference between the two is that the machine picked grapes come into the winery to the crush pad about 1 to 2 degrees above ambient temperature, while the hand-picked grapes are about 10 to 12 degrees above ambient temperature. Why? Because with a grape picking machine, you can pick 100 acres in one day. That's hundreds of thousands of tons of grapes. Whereas to accumulate enough grapes to fill a truck to go to the winery, it'll take about 3 or 4 hours with your crew. And so as a result, fermentation starts. As soon as that grape bunch is picked off the vine, the reverse osmosis has stopped, and so bacteria and yeast start fermenting your grapes. And you really don't want those rogue fermentations to be happening. So in some of the wineries, they're also splashing a little bit of potassium metabisulfite on there too, to kill off those rogue yeast and bacteria from going forward. Let's go to the next slide, please. Looking at it, tasting. So there's 5 things as far as tasting is concerned. The first thing I do, as soon as I open up that bottle, I hear that pop of that cork. And that's one of the essential things about wine. You hear it as it goes down the side of your glass. When you pour that glass, you look at it, is it really clear? Is it that true color? For instance, if you're drinking a Chardonnay, there's 2 distinct colors that you see in the Chardonnay. One is that pale yellow, and the other one is a darker straw yellow. And the darker straw color is based on the Chardonnay being aged in oak, which provides it a little bit of a vanilla taste, and also malolactic fermentation, which makes it a little bit more buttery. So if you like Chardonnay that's buttery and vanilla, you want that dark straw color. With the stainless steel fermented Chardonnays, they'll be more fruit forward with green apple and pear on the mouth. I like the stainless steel fermented Chardonnays in the summertime because I like my wines light. In the wintertime, I like them a little bit more heavy, so I go towards the malolactic fermented barrel-aged Chardonnays. Smell is also something that's very important. Why do we swirl that around? Because when we swirl the wine, we release esters and aromatics that are trapped in the wine fluid. Try putting this down a hand or a piece of paper and swirl that wine glass, and it traps the esters and aromatics. And as soon as you're done swirling, take that hand or paper off and immediately do a sniff. You're going to find that your nose is going to be much more sensitive towards tasting wines than your mouth. There's over 4,000 olfactory sensations on your nose that you can sense in the wines, whereas on your mouth there's only 5. They're sweet, sour, salty, bitter, and the 5th one we've come to know is savory, or umami as the Japanese call it. Once that wine is on your tongue, you could have those sensations. And then there's another sensation that we have, which is called body. How long is that wine taste stay on the back of your tongue? When we say a wine's got great body, We mean that there's some wine structure there and it stays on the back of your tongue. So when you swirl that wine glass, you see these little rivulets come down the side of your glass. Those are called legs. That deals with the amount of alcohol and esters that you have in the wine. And then when you do your sniffy sniff on the wine in the glass, that's the nose and then the body. So ladies and gentlemen, when we talk about a wine having a wonderful nose, great body, beautiful legs, we're talking about the wines, right? So let's go on to the next slide. Okay, so wine, I have 5 or so rules that I run my wine tasting by. Number 1, you're supposed to drink what you like. And so if you don't like a certain drink, don't drink it. If I grew up having to eat broccoli, so I developed a taste for broccoli, and I love broccoli today. Doesn't mean that you like broccoli or liverwurst the way that I do. Likewise with wines, you have certain ones that you have a tendency to go to. Okay, so wine is also meant to be shared. And when we do that sharing, there's some personality that goes into that. For my wife and I, when the weather's nice in the evening, we go out on the back veranda with our wines and a little bit of maybe Andrea Puccelli in the background, and we talk about our day. We share our day, we share our wine, we share our lives, and that's what wine is all about, is that sharing of that. So we can go off from that screen if you want to, and I want to do a little self-assessment for people, if you can. Okay, so those of you that like the sweeter wines, can you raise your hands? I can't see anybody, so view options here. Let's go to Zoom again. Well, I can't seem to get anybody. Okay, there we go. Does anybody like sweet wines? Raise your hands if you do. Okay, Jackie, Sherry. Let me ask you this. Anybody have a sensitive nose? You get perfumes that smells that really... Yeah, okay. Sherry and Jackie. Do you mind if I ask you a personal question? Do you mind, girls? Nod your head, yes or no. Y'all cut the tags out of your clothes, don't you? And yeah, and you sleep on high count thread sheets. And the reason that I know that is it's all about genetics. Those people that like sweets, particularly sweet wines, you are blessed with 15,000 to 17,000 taste buds on your tongue. Bet you didn't know that, Sherry or Jackie. And because of that, you have a tendency to want to have a dominant taste. And so you go towards the sugars, and you probably salt your foods unless Mama taught you not to. And that's only because you are that super taster. Your nose is also a part of that genetic makeup, and you're sensitive to smells. And likewise, your skin is sensitive, and so you have a tendency to want to cut the tags out of your clothes, and you want to sleep on high count thread sheets because those coarse sheets are too coarse for your sweet bodies. So what we drink, what we eat is all based on our genetics. And just because somebody likes sweet wines doesn't mean that they should be on the same ground as everybody else is if you like sweet wines. And by the way, in Texas, we put sugar in our tea. So Jackie and Sherry, it's okay to put a little bit of sugar in your wine if it's not sweet enough for you. We add spices to our foods. We could do that with wine. There's absolutely no rule that says you cannot do that. I know some winemakers will like to put a little speck of black pepper in their Zinfandel or Shiraz because they want to bring out the pepperiness in it. Or add just a dash of vanilla to an oak-aged wine, and you'll bring out more of that oakiness to it. So little things like that. Go ahead back to the slide presentation. Okay, are we there yet? Anyway, we're getting close to the end of my presentation, and so anybody have any questions? Go ahead and unmute yourself, or if you don't want to, you can put it on chat. And Lynn, please share my presentation, my PowerPoint with everybody that would like it. Wine and wine presentations are meant to be shared.
They started opening the tasting rooms again as far as the government or the governor has gone, because I know they were closed and only pickup in Fredericksburg.
Yes. For some reason, the governor thinks that wineries and bars fall in the same classification. They do only as far as alcohol sales are concerned, but wineries have wide expanses of outdoors. And there's a lot of wineries that hold outdoor concerts. And so wineries like Bernhardt Winery near Plantersville, Wild Stallion down in Harris County, in Galveston County, Hack Winery, they hold a lot of outdoor concerts. And so the outdoors are consideration, but the governor has allowed wineries and bars up to 50%. And you cannot stand at the bar. You are supposed to be seated, and a server will come and serve you at the table. And the tables are supposed to be about 6 foot apart. Did I answer your question adequately?
Kind of. I know that I follow, of course, I like going to Fredericksburg, and I know some of the tasting rooms, they said you had to pick them up, that you couldn't do it in person.
You can do
for a
that
little while.
now, and
You can, okay.
coming up, this weekend is the last weekend for their Texas Wine Month wine trail. And so if you were to go tomorrow, they actually have wineries on the wine trail that will serve you. Most wineries in that area are closed on Mondays, but Thursday, Friday, Saturday, yes, wonderful time. My Wine Walk article coming out this Friday deals with Halloween in wineries. There's one over in San Saba that is now open called Old Man Scary Winery. And they actually have a old house that has been abandoned, but it was inhabited by an old man. And there was a murder in that house. And the kids in that area were always scared of that man. And when they bought the place, they named their winery Old Man Scary Winery. If you go to Messina Hoff this Friday night, they have haunted fermentation room visits over there. And there's a few wineries that actually have outdoor spook trails, adults only. Any more questions?
Ron, I have one. I heard a while back, and I don't know if there was any truth to it. They said that even though a lot of the wines here are produced with Texas grapes, the majority of the grapes used in the wines are imported still.
You were right in that back about 6-7 years ago, we did not have enough grapes grown here in Texas. And our grape vineyard production has just skyrocketed. It's more than doubled in the last 7-8 years. And we have more vineyards that are coming on. And so we also had an identity crisis going on when we first started growing grapes in Texas. We tried to emulate California. Well, California and Texas are two worlds apart, I can tell you that. The grape varietals that we're growing here now, the Roussins and the Vedres, the Tannats, those types of grape varietals do exceptionally well here in Texas, much better than in California. Yeah, Napa Valley has been doing wonderful with its Cabernet Sauvignons, but we're doing wonderful with other grape varietals, and we're making up for lost time and trying to find our identity. And there's a huge number of vineyards up on the Texas High Plains that are just converting from cotton fields to vineyards. And they found out two things when they were starting to do that. Number one, grape crops use about 1/5 of the amount of water that cotton needs to grow. So that was a savings from the Ogallala Aquifer up there. And the second thing is that the cotton farmers could actually make more money per acre with grapes than they could cotton. So a lot of these generational cotton farmers are converting over to grapes.
Wow.
When it
Interesting.
comes down to Rotary and wine appreciation, you know that we do have a fellowship, a Rotary Wine Fellowship, which I'm a member of. Those of you that enjoy wine, I hope that y'all would consider to become a lifetime membership member in the Rotary Wine Appreciation Fellowship. It's a great way to meet other people. In Texas, we're starting to get more and more events where we can group together. At Rotary International Convention, they have a lot of events going on almost nightly. Your club raises raises funds with wine events, and let me know when y'all have that so that I can make my club aware about that. And we also have our socials. Coming up, we have December, and we always, whatever leftover wine that we have from our wine fundraisers, it's gone during our December social. Hope that happens in your club. Any other questions?
I have a question. I want to know, first of all, does Texas sell more red than white wine? And what do you, if you were to list the top 3 wineries in Texas, who would you list?
Whoa, good questions. Okay, so the top wines, Tempranillos, Sangioveses. As far as the reds are concerned, Viognier is an outstanding grape varietal, and we've just been winning so many medals with those 3 grape varietals. Mm-hmm. And as far as the top wineries, oh boy, like I pointed out earlier, everybody has their own taste. Those of you that like sweet wines, drink your sweet wines. Those of you that want other types of wines, drink those wines too. For my palate, I love Becker. Becker has a good assortment of wines. William Chris over in the Fredericksburg area, definitely visit them.
Okay.
If you have some money to spend up in the hill country, visit Calais, Calais. Benjamin Calais is a Frenchman who uses Texas fruit to make some outstanding wines, mostly in the way of the French as they do it. Other really good wineries, well, Messina Hoff makes some good wines, but they make some really great wines when you get up to their upper end, like Palo series. They make 95 different wines over at Messina Hoff, and different levels of taste. But the Palo Cab and what's the name of it? Opus. Their red was paired in a blind wine tasting, and Opus sells for about $160 a bottle, while the Messina Hoff red sells for about $70 a bottle. Mm-hmm. And it was split. Nobody really had a majority. It was a 50-50. So if you had a chance or choice between picking a $70 bottle or a $150 bottle, and they're both the same quality, which would you choose?
Yeah.
Hey, Ron, this is Henry Venta. I have a question, comment for you. Let's see, was it a year ago, January, I work at Lamar University. I took a group of students on a study abroad trip to the Costa Blanca region of Spain. That's where Alicante is.
Yeah.
And one of the places we visited was a winery because we're looking at local industry issues. And these people were just fascinated by the soil in Central Texas, and they used that as filtering for their wines. And then they claimed that because of that, some grapes that grow in the Alicante region were transplanted to Central Texas, and they do very well. I can't remember the name of the grape right now. Do you know anything about that?
I don't, but thank you for bringing that up. That educated me. The bodegas over in Spain make some really great Tempranillos. And what they do in Spain is a lot different than what they do here, because in Spain they age their Tempranillos in oak for several years. If you get you a Rioja Reserva, then the Gran Reserva, that's aged, I believe, in 4 years in oak. And that's a Tempranillo grape. We don't do that length of aging here in Texas. We're probably more fruit forward. One other thing I also ought to point out is that every region is starting to have its own wine styles. California has its own, and the Napa people are starting to get off a track because they're bringing in grapes that are too high in sugars. So your alcohol contents are 15% and slightly above. That provides a burn in the back of your throat. It's not very enjoyable to me. Maybe some people like it, but in Texas we have our own styles. We're more fruit forward. In Spain, where you were, they probably had a lot of oak that they aged in. The thing I'm getting to is that each area has its own style of making wine, and we're starting to settle into I guess habits of when we created this wine. It's won awards. We'll keep making it over and over again. Any other questions?
I know you have something else to do at 1 o'clock, so if you can take another question, that's fine, or if not, I'll go ahead and close it. Okay, thanks. Any more questions? Sorry to interrupt you like that. I just had got a message earlier that you needed to be gone by 1. I didn't want to mess you up on that.
I'm on the board for the Heritage Museum of Montgomery County. I love it. It's the only time you can gossip and get by with it.
Well, thank you.
Sherry, your Lenoir Rosé. Lenoir is a grape that's grown here along the Texas Gulf Coast, and that's another one of those wonderful grapes that we can grow here. It's not as big or bold as Tempranillos, but it's a wonderful red grape. You can make that into a rosé. I enjoyed myself. Vine to Wine Vineyard and Winery. That's a wonderful franchise that's getting people involved in the wine industry, and anything that can be done to get people noticing wine. Gallo made some really, bad wine back in its heyday. Anybody remember Thunderbird? My wife has a recipe for Thunderbird. If anybody can find bottles of that stuff for me, he makes a wonderful cake. And I've also found it great for cleaning windows. So I will leave you with a thought. Wine is meant to be shared. So share, share, share. Enjoy visiting with y'all. Have a wonderful club. And before I leave, Jackie, I sent you a text or a chat. Look at that, and if you can have that done, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Today, I'm out of here.
Thank you, Ron. We're going to be making a donation in your name to Rotary International in economic and community development. So thank you so much for being with us today and all the information.
Have a blessed week. Bye.
Thank you, Ron.
Well, Ron just basically took me through my high school years with Boone's Farm, Thunderbird. If he had just mentioned Mad Dog 2020, man, he'd have had me swept. very interesting to know. I remember when the Wineaux Estacado came into Lubbock in '75, and it was a lot of talk going on about that, and they have really hung on there and do make some good ones. I want to wish a very happy birthday to Chad Mason today, and also remind you that you can be part of the Rotary Chorus, whether you can sing or not. Just sign up, you'll sing and record yourself in the privacy of your own home, and Dr. Hahn will make you sound like Whitney Houston, guaranteed. Our next speaker is going to be our very own Becky Mason, this year's 5910 district governor. So I know she's going to have some good information for us, and let's really turn out big next week to hear what Becky has to say. So in closing, let's end with the four-way test of the things we think, say, or do. First, is it the truth?
Is it the truth?
Second, is it fair to
Fair to
all
all
concerned?
Fair to all concerned.
Third, will it build goodwill and better
Build goodwill and
friendships?
better friendships.
And fourth, will it be beneficial
Be
to all
beneficial to all
concerned?
concerned.
So have a good week. Go out and find opportunities to lead and serve. Thank you all.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.